What's up, guys, and welcome to episode 3 of NOBS Powerlifting Podcast. Um, Today we're going to be going over a lot of current events. We have a very stacked lineup. The main thing we want to discuss today is the top 3 sets of all time for each individual discipline, squat, bench, deadlift. But a lot of the meat of this episode is going to come from current events because we have a lot going on. And there were a couple of meets that just passed this past weekend here as well, which we're going to get into. So I'll let Johnny guide us through all the current events.
Yeah, so needless to say, this was a stacked weekend. And of course, whatever, USAPL Nats was all ages, and we had IPF and subjuniors and juniors. But we have new federations coming in. We have ABS coming in, which is a new federation to the US. There's a lot. So this top 3 sets is not going to be done like we did the top 5 performances. This is just our shared top 3 sets of all time, and it's going to be honestly condensed. We're not going to go too in depth on any specific one of these, just kind of touch on the critical points and then kind of move on. And the first one is definitely this new fed in Powerlifting United. I've been given a ridiculous amount of information on how this all came to be and the timing of things. And to be honest, a significant amount of it I can't share because, I mean, I might be sued, to be honest. Like, some of this is some pretty aggressive stuff. But for more of a professional take here, the majority of the things that I've been getting asked about it are, is this a money grab, right? Is this like some sort of coup, pretty much, where the guys who were running, right, and Anna, excuse me, that's how you pronounce her name, Anna, Micah, that whole crew, right, which for those who don't know or don't follow Untested Powerlifting, are essentially the people that have created all of the meets over the past like 4 or 5 years. They were under the USPA banner, and then once the USPA kind of blew up with all the pedo stuff and whatever, they moved over to the WRPF under Rob Kearney, and now after this kind of implosion, have decided to create their own fed in the PLU, Powerlifting United, which they very much so tout. They don't want like this federation feel for. They're just kind of like a group of people organizing all of these things. So the 2 biggest myths, right, or I guess what I've been asked is this a money grab? And in my opinion, it is certainly not a money grab. One of the main reasons that I think it's not is that any Fed membership that you pay for until the end of the year carries over free. So if you're in the IPF and want to go compete, it's not just WRPF moving over to PLU. If you're in the USPA and want to go compete, you don't have to pay a membership. None of this stuff, which of course is something that you do as a newer company anyways. But if this was a money grab, it would be very easy to say, yes, this would get them off the ground, massively. On top of that, a lot of people were saying they weren't being paid. So they're just disgruntled employees trying to now like shit, for lack of a better word, on their past employer and move over and kind of like poach all of these people. But that's not true. They've been getting paid the entire time. They went to Russia earlier this year to really try and figure things out, and it didn't happen. So I'm not going to really, I'll ask Ron his opinion at the end of this, but I'm the only one that was given all of this information. So this may sound like a slight rant here. But the way that this essentially boils down, or why they kind of left and decided to start this new thing, is an abuse of power from the top. Alleged, all of this alleged, of course, because I can't get a hold of Rob Kearney and the other side. So I don't know if any of this is 100% true, but with the amount of evidence that I was given that I can't share with you guys, I'm at least confident in making these statements on this podcast. It boils down to abuse of power, aggressive mismanagement of funds, and lack of transparency with funds. They were asking them for, I don't even know how long, just to be able to hire an accountant to know where this money was going and how things were being used, and they were just completely shut down on these things. It was a complete lack of autonomy, right? Where basically Anna and the head of the corporation on the US side of things in the WRPF were, yes, appointed to these positions of power, but were then being stopped with using funds like these guys, Anna, Albert, like paying for medals and stuff out of their pocket for meets and things. And they were just given appointed positions of power, but weren't really given the resources necessary to actually do what they were looking to do. Every meet director, if this means anything to anybody listening, every meet director that was doing anything in the WRPF meaningful within 12 hours of Powerlifting United becoming a thing, completely switched over and left the WRPF. That should say, in my opinion, at least a lot. about any speculation around like, hey, are these guys just kind of trying to like poach and leave, or, you know, blah, blah, blah. Are these guys the problem? Have Anna and this group, Anna, Micah, whatever, been the problem for the last 4 years, that there's no money meets, that there's, you know, that these things are declining? And I think it says a lot that the second that they go and create their own fed, all of the meet directors go with them. It tells me that most likely the issues with all of these things, and the reason why untested powerlifting hasn't gotten what they've been asking for, is just because of the top thing there. Now, of course, this is all speculation, but what I ask you guys to do at least is, these guys have been losing money on big meets, right? Anna and Micah went in the red on the American Pro 1 and 2. They are really, in my opinion, people that are just trying to do the best for powerlifting, but now they have no scapegoat, right? So if anything, don't judge them on the last 4 years when they always had something to refer back to. Oh, we can't get funds from here, or they won't let us do this. There's nobody there anymore. They are the top. So if anything, watch over the next year and a half while they're, you know, whatever, rebuilding and getting things up, even though they do have quite a bit of infrastructure already in place, with the fact that it is essentially just WRPF America moving over to PLU. Judge them on what they're about to do, because there's absolutely no scapegoat, nobody above. There's nobody to be like, we couldn't do this because of this. It's their decisions from here on out. So positive or negative, it's on their heads. And I am of the opinion that we're about to see a lot of positive changes, especially with what I've heard in the background. What do you think about all that, Ron? I know that sounds legal and like super, you know, whatever, but like it's the only professional statement we're going to have on here, because I'm not getting sued.
So my take on it, like I was a little bit shocked when I heard the news of like a brand new federation and pretty much like everybody switching over. Just because I felt like if the thing with the USPA had just happened and everybody flocked to the WRPF and that became what it was. But I felt like if I have heard like rumblings of like, oh well, there's this issue with this and this issue with that, especially like even just talking to like Garrett, for example, and stuff like that, because he was heavily involved with the WRPF, right? But it, I don't know. I feel like if I don't know if what?
It's a mess.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just that like positions of power attract people who like can't handle the power, or if it's just simply that every human being becomes corrupt over time to some extent. But because I feel like if every single federation, at least in powerlifting, because that's the sport that I'm in, has just like some major issues where it's either something where it's like allegations of something very serious, like obviously with the USPA, it was like sexual stuff, right? Or it could just simply be like gross incompetence, which is crazy, right? Because it's like you would be one elected to like lead the federation, and then you're just simply not doing what's best for the federation, which is crazy, right? So yeah, I don't know. I hope it works out for the best, but I do feel like if the constant like switching of federations could have people in a position where they're just simply skeptical, even though it might be for the best. It's just simply a situation where it's like this just happened with USPA, WRPF. So now for this entirely new thing, as you said, is like it's probably best for some people just to take like a step back and see how things go over a certain period of time.
Yeah, exactly. I understand the skepticism from absolutely anybody. I have never been thrown for more of a loop in my entire life when I entered this sport, following, you know, the entire history of Untested and it being so solid and at the forefront of the sport. I've never been thrown for more of a loop when it comes to the USPA coming down and me being, I was like the champion of the USPA. Like I loved the USPA. I touted their record that I had so much, redacted it immediately, move over to the WRPF. I'm like, oh geez, now I'm like with Yuri, and now I'm with nobody. But I do think that really the only fair way to do it is to keep your skepticism, but maybe suspend your anger and kind of just watch how this goes. Because now the core group of people that you've kind of been blaming the entire time, but have had a consistent scapegoat, don't have a scapegoat. So just watch what's about to happen. I think it's really the only like fair way to go about it. And I do not blame anybody for starting from a place of disbelief, but at least let them surprise you if they're going to, if that makes any sense.
So one thing I wanted to ask, right? Obviously, the thing that we look at the most is just like open powerlifting and stuff like that, right?
I
But
can't
what is
with that.
what is gonna happen with the WRPF records? Are they just like transferring over? Or...
Here's the thing, WRPF records, in my opinion, just as most Fed records, in my opinion, mean nothing. But in the IPF, right, they mean a little more to me. But
Yeah.
they did a complete wipe of the WRPF records when the USPA thing happened. So the WRPF records were technically only a year old anyways, but it doesn't matter because we have this glorious database called Open Powerlifting where it doesn't really matter. So I don't know if specifically all of the records set over the last year will transfer over to PLU, but
Mhm.
their records a year old anyways, and any of the guys that did set them in the last year specifically, I mean, I might be missing somebody off the top of my head, but I don't think so. They're all active guys that are continuously gaining strength and are now going to compete in PLU and probably best whatever they did last year in the first place. So I don't know whether they're transferring over or not, but it's not like anybody had their like last big meet in the W. It's not like Dan Bell put up 2,600 last year and then like that's not going to come over, you know? So yeah, you know what? That's honestly as in depth as I would like to go on it because I don't. Like I said, I want to see how this goes, and we'll definitely be speaking on it as it evolves. But from the information I'm given, that's what I'm comfortable saying for now, and I am optimistic, I guess, to say the least. Now, USAPL Nats. A few things about US. First of all, were there any standout performances to you outside of Frank?
Stand out. I think Jalen Faulk had a good meet, but I don't even know if it was better than last
No.
year.
I talked to JJ. I met JJ finally. That has been like the longest time coming. I remember when he was like, I don't know if he was 18 or 19, whatever, but I was shouting him out. I think you remember it when me and Liam were doing those lives and stuff. And I was like,
Mhm.
dude, there's this kid in the 100, like down in primal. This kid's just a fucking tank. Um,
Yeah.
and he's going to come in and do some stuff. And then obviously he came in and won last year in not the prime time, one in the morning. All of the
Mhm.
guys that competed prime time in the afternoon had time to know what they had to do and couldn't hack it. But that was before the split, yeah.
No, that was the split happened already. Yeah.
Oh,
Because
you're
that
right.
was
Was
that
it?
was
Yeah.
the one I did. Yeah, that was the one
No,
I
you're
did.
right. You're right. True. But JJ, I talked to him. Whatever. We talked about his performance very briefly, and I was just like, dude, congrats on the win. But like, and he wasn't happy with it either. It's not his. You know what I mean? He didn't even in my opinion, come close to what he's capable of. I think he squatted like 672 or something like that. He is so capable of squatting low sevens. I don't really remember what he benched. I think it was mid fours. But he just missed a 500-pound bench, but he's so close to it, dude. It might have even been like 463, 474. I'm just not going to say something that I didn't know happened at the meet. And then he only
Yeah.
pulled, I think, three. No, he missed his last pull. It was like 357, and then they called it like accelerating the bar towards the ground and gave him a no lift.
I saw that. That was a horrible call.
But the problem is it happens 99% of the time. Like it happened on his opener, it happened on his second. They just decided to call it on his third. I
Yeah.
understand it happens at meets all the time when somebody's close on depth or does something like that on their opener, and then the judges are like, "Hey, dude, watch out for this," you know. But it gets called on a second no matter what. You don't let something slide on the first and the second and then call it on the third. You let something slide on the opener. If it happens again, you call it on the second so that somebody can really make an adjustment.
Yeah.
But the only other standout performance to me would have been Jordan McKinley,
Mhm.
where that kid is an absolute tank. It is the saddest thing in the world that he missed whatever weight by like a couple pounds
Yeah.
and out totaled Dan Howell, who I am not touching that situation. That's something that should be done in court. I don't think anybody should be on Instagram talking about this stuff until it's at least settled in court.
Yeah.
But he out totaled him by like 40 or 45 keys. It was like, geez, dude. But watching that kid, whether he's going to go IPF or USAPL, I don't care. Same standard to me. If that
Yeah.
kid really starts blowing away 93 totals, and in the USAPL, they're still at 90, so he had to make 198. If that kid comes in no cut at like a full 210, 212, that kid is a threat to absolutely anybody,
Yeah.
or is about to be. So I'm extremely excited for that. Now, Frank was really, for me, it's the only reason why we went. Me and Shane walked in, and I'm not going to lie, dude, it was so disheartening. Like, me and Shane kind of looked at each other and we were like, this is Nats, dude. Like, wait, the venue was, no, I swear it was so sad. Like, the venue was
Yeah.
way too big. It was really nice, like the Salt Palace, whatever. It's just a massive center,
Yeah.
or palace, I guess, whatever. But when you walked in there, it was like they had the vendors facing away from the platforms. They were just kind of like lackluster, placed all over the place. And it was just a big empty room. There were better turnouts. At least I wasn't there for day 1 or 2. And I know that people do kind of drop off after like the 100 and 110 go. And the heavier
Yeah.
guys kind of on that last day, especially Sunday, people go home. But there were, I've been maybe at 1 or 2 untested local meets that had worse turnouts than USAPL Nats, where you had Frank Allen competing within 12 hours or 14 hours of his performance at the Rumble and putting up 1,000-kilo total, which is one of the most impressive things that's ever happened in powerlifting, let alone the fact that he snapped his SI up, really messed his back up on his opener at the Rumble with 881 and couldn't take the rest of his squats and turned around and did the exact same thing 12 hours later. I had to tell Gino, I was like ran up to him. I was like, dude, you guys have no idea. This guy competed like 12 hours ago. Like, you gotta say something about this. And I saw Sean Koch in person. We didn't get to meet because he was competing. Me and Shane left after squats.
Yeah, I saw him on the live stream, man.
He's huge, bro. I did not realize that. I mean, I could have guessed he's a big guy, but I didn't know he was that big. That guy is like a massive, massive guy.
Yeah.
But he did well too. But Frank was definitely, for me, the story of USAPL Nats, just with like, I mean, me and Shane half went because it's like an experiment in strength. It's like, what happens when somebody competes 14 hours back to back? And I guess at the first meet, he goes, whatever, 3 or 4 for 9, or no, he got all his pulls, or maybe his last, I don't know, whatever. At best, 5 or 6 for 9, and then turns around and goes 9 for 9 the next day. It's just like insane.
Yeah.
But by far the most disheartening part of Nats for me, is finding out I'm not gonna name names here. I don't think it's cool to just like call people out like that. But I read DMs from actually a champion of Nats. He won his class to an Instagram account, and from his own mouth saying that he takes SARMS and that a lot of his buddy takes SARMS, and it's just kind of a thing on the in the USAPL on the tested side. And I know it happens in the IPF. From maybe not the top guys, but I know personally of guys who don't really podium, who are on 500 tests, 600 tests until, like literally a month out from the meet, and then obviously perform horribly. But to hear that it's going on in the USAPL and that it's actually like widespread and not in these like random countries, is definitely something that really, like, I don't know, what do you think about that as somebody that competes on the test? Like, it kind of crushes me.
It's a little bit disheartening to hear, just because like I feel like if the people who compete tested and use any form of like PED, they always tell themselves like, oh no, well, other people are doing it, so like I would do it as well. So it's like whoever it is would be using SARMs would convince themselves like, oh well, the guys I compete against will probably be like using some stuff as well. But it's tough, especially to do it like, well, like somewhat openly to the point where you can like message someone about it. It's crazy.
That's what I'm saying. I can't believe, like, it's just like, listen, like the amount of guys, right, like, that have said, I don't want to bring up Jesus or, anything like this, but the amount of guys that are like, what do you mean? Drugs? Cheating? Like, no, I would never, you know what I mean? Blah, blah, blah. But it's like, what's the difference? There's no cheating going on the untested side. That is guys taking gear against guys who are taking gear. If you just have the mask on where you're taking gear and like competing in the USAPL, like how do you even have the audacity to speak from your side of things? I'm not talking about if you are somebody that takes these PEDs, but if you are somebody that knows that it's going on your side of the sport, how do you have the audacity to say that guys competing on an equal playing field on the other side of the sport are cheating when your entire side is filled with guys that are just like actually cheating, And thank God they're not winning. I guess this guy just won USAPL Nats, but like, they're not winning the top of the field at least.
What percentage of like top tested guys do you think are on some form of like PED?
Top?
Yeah.
Like
top
banned substance and not creatine and not like things like that, yeah?
Yeah.
No, you're PEDs, right? Like performance.
Wait, it's creatine a PED?
Yeah, bro.
Is it a drug? I feel like it's like,
yes. Caffeine is a drug, bro. Alcohol's it. What do you mean? Of course.
I don't take caffeine.
I know you don't, bro. You're by far the purist. You're just a dirty creatine user. You dirty
Yeah.
creatine user. No, there's literally that's it. But of course it is. It enhances your performance. Drug, creatine, but
Okay.
it's clearly on the what's it called? All good list. But
Yeah.
in terms of the amount of top guys competing, top guys you're talking about, right? Like guys
Yeah.
that are podiuming and things like that. I
Yeah.
really don't think it's 5 to 10, maybe. And like if we're out of what pool, we're talking 20, 30 guys, maybe
Yeah.
like 2 or 3 guys that I have in mind who I've heard some shady stuff in the past about. I don't know if it's happening currently, and none of it is like incredibly substantiated, but I've definitely heard it from enough mouths when it comes to just a few guys where it's like, all right, this is a little shady. These guys have no reasons to be like lying or hating on these people. They're just not providing me with a video of them pinning or taking, some SARMs or whatever. But
Yeah.
I would be actually crushed if it was more than 1 or 2 guys. Like that would I would be so mad. You should be pissed if it was more than 1 or 2 guys.
Here's why I would be crushed, because like I know what I am like capable of and like what I've done without like anything. So it's like I always say people, because there are people who think I'm on stuff, right? So it's like I always say if it
Getting
if
a veterinarian in Trinidad, there's no gear over there, bro.
right, so it's like if I'm like doing what I could do and I'm like completely like drug free, then it's like I believe that other people can as well, you know? So I try to give that benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, it's like I would be heartbroken to find out that, like,
Yeah, I mean, and just imagine what you could do. You know what I mean? Like, just imagine if you were competing on a level playing field. Not saying the rest of you are competing on a level playing field. The rest of the
yeah,
guys are hard. I am not saying that, but like,
yeah,
if there were to be more than whatever 1 or 2 guys out of the top 30 that are consistently podiuming across
mhm,
weight classes, then I would love to see a nice and even playing field and watch you go 2,600. Like, literally, I have no idea what you would do.
yeah,
But I guess in total in USAPL Nats, really sad about this little SARM thing that sucked. Really sad that I think the USAPL kind of in total is dying off. And it's really easy to say like, no, before you go see these things, because I've been to Nats, and I've been to these meets in the past, and they're huge. And of course, I think CNATs will never die. I really hope, unless all of these kids start going to PLA juniors, which totally might happen.
yeah.
I guess this year they put their university Nats as the same weekend as CNATs, right?
I think they did, yeah.
I think they did. So we'll see what happens there. That will honestly probably be the biggest indicator to me, because CNATs has always been like the biggest meet where it's like, if CNATs is dying, the rest of this has to be coming down. And it's sad and happy in a way, I guess. Just sad to see the death of the USAPL, but happy to see the entire side united in one Fed again.
Yeah, I think when I did Nats last year, um Sanjeev was telling me that like I should stay USAPL because Nats last year was like good. Like you had Ashton, Bob,
Keenan.
Keenan, Puck, myself, and like a lot of like top guys, and like you had Alexis Jones. It was a good meet, right? And the viewership and everything like that like reflected that. But I felt like if the writing was on the wall already for the USAPL, like you could just sense with everybody like switching over and then just the general sentiment. Like
Like,
I felt like, yeah, like that was the last good nationals for real. And
damn.
I remember, bro, I tuned into the live stream for the heavyweights, the same one where like Frank Allen was competing.
Yep.
And I think viewership was like maybe like 300 people, which
Bro, I had more than that at my surge meet. Like,
yeah, which is what I'm saying. Like for USAPL nationals, I remember when I competed, the peak viewership was like 3.5K, 4.5K, which is good, you know what I mean? But like 300, that's
you're talking about peak concurrent views, right?
yeah, like peak,
Yeah.
like yeah.
Most
So
people watching live, not total.
yes,
Exactly. 4.5K, 5K is great. By the end of it, you probably had whatever. If you go check out that live stream, it's probably 60, 70K now.
yeah,
Just with the amount of people that rewatch. But yeah, SARMS, USAPL Nats dying, and Frank being the absolute man. Which brings us into our next topic, which is abs and the Rumble. For those that don't know, which we talked about it on episode 2, ABS is a European fed that has been primarily in wraps, right? And they usually do stiff bar meets. They do have specialty bar meets as well. That was a mistake I made and corrected in the recourse on episode 2. And they just brought their first meet to the US, which I stated in the last one, I thought was a little bit of a botch in terms of format. Just in the fact that you only had whatever these 10 guys competing, and you could have garnered such a bigger meet. Granted, it is on a stiffy, and I don't know how many people would have been willing to do that outside of just a novelty meet. But I attended, and let me just say, in terms of the pros, right, the meet was great. Like the production value, the way that the athletes are treated, like I was massively impressed with how quick paced this stuff was, especially at the super heavyweight level. The standards were great. When it comes to this stuff, the press commands, which does not tie into the bar preference. We'll get to that on the con side, which there aren't many, but they were a few that were definitely strong for me. But the standards were great. They forced people to really, really push themselves. It's something that after the meet, I talked about with, a lot of guys, not Frank, because Frank has been competing under, these standards or stricter standards for quite some time. But a lot of these guys that are, maybe more local meet warriors or, these kind of things in the WRPF, they were definitely super impressed and were like, dude, I felt like an athlete this weekend. I felt cared for. I felt like I was competing at a high level competition, and I was held to a completely different standard, is what they were saying. Now, something that I really don't like well, did you watch the Rumble? Probably not. $5 for a live stream.
I watched like a couple like segments of it. Like, but not the actual Instagram? No, not the actual live stream on Instagram.
Yeah, dude, I don't understand people charging for a live stream. It's like, you guys, we are not the Super Bowl. We are not in the NBA. We are not in the NFL. If the number one thing you could be doing is getting your meet in front of as many eyes as possible, you are not going to make bank on a powerlifting podcast or on a powerlifting live stream. Just get it out there. Because I had so many people DMing me once I put up a story. They're like, how do I watch the live stream? And I was like, oh, I'm sure it's on their page. And they're like, it's $5. I was like, oh, don't pay for it. Just wait 10 minutes after the meet's over and watch all of these lifts on Instagram, because it's gonna happen anyways. So to ABS, who you guys are awesome. And not to mention, before we get to anything else, those are some cool guys, man. Like that crowd over there, I was so happy. I mean, Dave obviously had been waiting to meet for a while. Me and him, whatever, have followed each other. But the guys that I didn't really know, like Jake, Ireland's strongest powerlifting coach or whatever, he's the only guy to total 1,000 keys in Ireland. Those dudes are like the coolest dudes around. I would love to just spend a weekend kind of shooting the shit with them and talking. But something that I really didn't like that came out of ABS, which is not their fault at all, is this weird push for stiff bar meets and switching in its entirety to stiff bar on the untested side. First, I want to hear kind of your opinion on that.
So from my like biased opinion, I would love that. But just because, yeah, in its entirety. But here's why. It would just provide more, like a more standard, like watching experience, and allow for more comparison between tested and untested. So, for example, when I I have the exact same total as Danny Grigsby, right? Yep. And it's like, down, like I wonder what his total would be on a stiff bar, and
less.
Yeah, so it's just a situation where like I would love that, because I am the type of lifter that compares myself to anybody in my weight class, and anybody who's next to me on open powerlifting, and I think the biggest things that we had spoken about, and I think we did this on episode 1, was the bar, and then the 24 weigh-ins was just like two of the biggest differences, right? So 24 weigh-ins aside, because I actually think tested should switch to 24 weigh-ins.
Great.
I would love to see the stiff bar be the standard in untested. The only thing is though, and just the biggest reason why it can't happen, in my opinion, is just because of the history. Like, it's just been deadlift bars. Even when they switched to the kabuki and you saw like all the things switched, like that was tough. So if it is the switch from a Texas to the kabuki was harsh, the switch from the kabuki to a stiff bar would be, I don't even know what word to put on it. It would be dumb.
So here's kind of my gripe, and I guess I actually forgot to kind of touch on this when it comes to PLU. Before I get to this, my advice for the PLU moving forward, outside of just creating opportunities for money meets, right? Because you guys need to put money meets up. I don't know what to tell you. It's what people care about. A legitimate route and money meets are all people are looking for. The only reason that the untested side, like this whole standard thing, by no means does having a deadlift bar decrease the standard. That's what I can't stand, this phraseology that it's like, oh, the standard. And I understand the way you were talking about standard. You're just talking about standardizing across the entirety of powerlifting. It's just a consistent bar. But by no means is somebody competing on a deadlift bar pulling to a lower standard by any means, right? There's no hitching, there's no up and down. To all the judges and people that say a kabuki bar is significantly harder to judge, it is not. Do your job. There is one place that you should be looking for up and down motion in a bar, and that is whether we are talking stiffy or deadlift bar, and that is from the center judge staring at the center of that bar. If you side judges are staring at the sides of a kabuki bar with 1,100 pounds on it for Danny and calling up and down motion, there's going to be 1,000 up and down motions when that thing's locked out. It is not that much more difficult to judge. But outside of PLU for money meets and a legitimate route, you should eliminate monoliths, something that that ABS has proven across all of these meets outside of, I think, the power, I don't know, one of their bigger meets, the one Dan competed at. The biggest guys in wraps, right? Not saying the strongest guys all around, but they probably have they have the majority of the strongest guys in wraps competing there. Maybe not Pat McGuire, maybe not Justin Zotto, whatever, but a significant amount of those guys, they're all walking out in a combo rack. It improves viewership. It is significantly easier for people to look at. And it's something that people recognize. It's just so much better and happens nowhere outside of these like untested wrapped meets. The fact that we are in sleeves having to compete out of monos is insane. So I think a holistic.
What are your thoughts on safety with respect to that? Because I feel like the reason why it would be used in those untested wrap meets is because the loads being handled on squats in those meets would be, ridiculous.
So monos started because of equipped powerlifting. You're not walking something out in a double ply suit or a single ply suit, and then we moved to wraps and it stayed because it was there. But that was kind of the whole thing. It was like, hey, this is like sketchy, like being in wraps and but these guys are proving that it's not. It's just another thing that you have to get good at, walking out in wraps. I know talking to Briani coming over from the WRPF and doing a wrap meet in last year's pro and not having to walk this stuff out. One of the biggest things she was really worried about and struggling with in training was this wrapped walkout. And then just practicing it, and she got to the meet and she was like, this is nothing. This is easy. Just like anything else, taking massive sleep. How do you think Jesus feels squatting 1,000 plus on a power bar and dumping it into a combo rack? But if these other guys are doing it and proving that it's fine with these super heavy loads, then I see no reason, if it's a positive overall for the sport in terms of viewership and standardization, not just bar preference, but like a lot of these people that don't even know powerlifting, they're like, oh, why is this guy on that? And what is this? Like, what even is that? I haven't even seen that. You know what I mean? A combo rack looks essentially like a half rack to most people once the bench is taken out. Very familiar, very open, very nice for media. You can get so many good shots of these things. Mono, pretty much every meet I've ever done in a mono, the video of my squat is like, you're getting around, like it's horrible. So I think it improves live stream quality. I think it improves viewability on Instagram. And it's just something else that people have to get good at. And I don't think that's a problem. Like, yes, it's inherently riskier, but I think it's a positive overall if it's something that's demanded on athletes and something that's already happening at a high level wrapped meet in a different federation. But to this stiff bar taking over in terms of untested, I love the idea, make no mistake, of having the opportunity to compete on a stiff bar. These meets sprinkled in, and this is something for PLU as well. You guys should have meets that you guys do on power bars. There shouldn't be like no route to compete on it. But by no means can you just say that bringing a stiff bar over to untested powerlifting and wiping away a deadlift bar improves a standard. Everybody can be pulling to the exact same standard on a deadlift bar. And the biggest thing is you're inherently discrediting the entirety of the history on the untested side of powerlifting, which up until 5 or 6 years ago was essentially the entirety of powerlifting outside of a few cherry-picked meets when it comes to the IPF over the last, 20, 25 years. You're telling me that Kaler's records don't matter. Dan Green's records don't matter. None of these things, because they were done to terrible standards on a stiff bar, done to a perfect standard, or on a deadlift bar, done to a perfect standard, but on a deadlift bar. The singular reason I compete is to best those records. Open powerlifting means everything to me, which we're going to get to in a minute here. Oh, actually, it shows up on this side when we're recording. But yeah, you can't wipe these things out. If you guys were to completely switch over to a stiff bar, I personally, and I know many people would share this with me, I've had many conversations with Derek, a bunch of other top untested dudes, that would fully go compete in illegitimate feds in the RPS, XPC, whatever it is. And thank God we have videos now where I can just post these things and be like, look at the standard I did it to. I know that the Fed doesn't demand this high of a standard, but look, I still did it to a standard that would have passed in any of these other feds, blah, 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 because you cannot strip my opportunity away to stand at the top of human evolution against guys with such rich history. And the only reason that I compete in the first place, it's blasphemy. In my opinion. You see what I'm saying?
I fully agree.
Like, I would love the comparability, like, of totals, tested and untested, but there's still, like, for somebody like you who's just going to compare yourself total wise to absolutely anybody, because you can, because you're that strong and that talented. That doesn't really hold true for, like, a lot of these guys. And you see it, right? Like, you see these guys being like, oh, untested is a whole different thing, blah, blah, blah. They take gear, they take blah, blah, blah. Like, for the majority of people, yes, it improves the comparability at the top level, but it doesn't change the fact that for the bottom 95% of the Fed on the tested side, they're not comparing themselves to, untested powerlifting. And I feel like this kind of history and the fact that all of these records really, really matter, and the vast majority of them were taken incredibly legitimately. I feel like that's so, like, one's here and one's here, and it just squashes this thing. You know what I mean? It just doesn't, it's not a thing. But I maybe understand Ab's perspective slightly more, or at least understand where they're coming from, which apparently I read a bunch of DMs this morning between Derek and Abs, which was actually really funny. But they are like super duper championships over dots guys. They said open powerlifting doesn't matter. Nobody really cares about it, that it's a voluntary, it's run by, like, volunteers or whatever. Which I don't know how, I'd be stupid to say that I understand the evolution of powerlifting in anywhere but the United States. Outside of the United States, I follow very specific people, Zahir, Andre, Christoph, Yuri, like, specific guys, but by no means have I watched, like, feds come up in these other countries. They were comparing it to, like, Olympic head-to-heads and things like that, which to me hold no water. You're talking about, like, everybody being in the same spot, right? And actually, something I'd like to say on that, right? If you want to compare, what's like the closest thing to the Olympics that we have in powerlifting?
World champs.
Worlds, by far, right? So they have head-to-heads, right? Because their whole thing was like, you haven't beaten Dave, though. And Derek's like, I don't have to, like, I'm literally the all-time world record holder here. And they were saying, yeah, but you didn't beat Dave. You didn't have to do it head to head. I doubt that Dave loaded 982 or whatever load 982, or Zach would, just to chip somebody on open powerlifting. That means nothing compared to, like, winning this meet head to head. You in the IPF, right? Or not you in the IPF, but the 120s in the IPF all go head to head. And Tony Cliff won with what, 960, 965?
I think 950 something.
Great. So you go in the USAPL and you total 1040?
1045, yeah.
1045. You are, in their eyes, right? You had no head-to-head. Doesn't matter. So they're more impressive because they actually had a head-to-head. It doesn't matter that you were under the exact same standards, which I understand that Dave's was done on a stiff bar, which is different. But bro, you're to Abs, you're just some dude out in, like, some fat. You know what I mean? It's absolutely, it's, like, insane to me to have that mindset. Dots matter, at least for me, right? Of course, this is a matter of opinion. And I think a few times they did tell Derek, they're like, I see where you're coming from, but I still, believe this. And to at least me, and I know you share the sentiment as well, open powerlifting and all-time world records are everything. I do not care who is at my meet. I could not care less. I want to do one of their meets. Their meets are sick. And I want to go do a stiff bar meet at some point. But by no means will I be touching a stiff bar until I accomplish everything I need to record-wise on open powerlifting, get that 7+ on squat, get that 5+ on bench, and get that K+ in the 242 after I accomplish the goal that has taken me 4 years to do, and I still haven't done, right? Who knows? 5 years, 6 years, hopefully just a few months. But the only reason I compete is to take this Christoph 956 or 955.7 world record from him. It holds that much water to me. So what do you think about open powerlifting meaning nothing, that it's a volunteer database, the fact that Derek is whatever, somewhat getting discredited, and these totals that aren't done on an abs stage, which literally just came here for the first time, are getting somewhat discredited?
I think one of the things that people they overstate is just simply how head-to-heads impact performances. I'm not saying that they don't, but at the end of the day, like, powerlifting isn't like boxing. Like, we're not out here like hitting each other. We not,
or basketball or football. It's like track. It's like, would you say Bolt run slower if he didn't have a guy next to him? It's like, I don't think so, dude. I think that guy's running as fast as he can.
But the thing is, even in track, like, I could understand it more because it's like this guy is running right next to me. Like, at the same time.
Maybe a little bit, but still, right? Like, I don't.
Yeah. But I think the thing is, in powerlifting is like, it's almost like if we just get together to do SBD days, So
I was thinking that last night. Like, everybody gets angry at meets and gets in this like dark headspace. The biggest positive for me at my last meet was being like, you know what? This for me is me getting together with like a group of buddies, and we're gonna have a sick SBD day, and it's gonna count. Like, how sick is that? It's gonna go in open pop, but that's it at the end of the day, like,
And that's the thing, like, the time you spend in the back is not you, like, yes, you're zoning in and whatever, but it's all like you're just resting between your singles, like, that's all you're doing, really. So it's like, to say championships matter more, and I think the thing people get caught up with as well is like, when you say dots versus championships, dots is just simply an expression of your total versus your body weight.
Yeah.
So when we say dots, we mean dots, but we also really just mean your total as compared to your body weight.
Yeah, dots isn't a perfect coefficient, is what you're trying to say.
For sure. So it's like, I think, and this is what we had summarized it with, I believe, when we had spoken about it on the Two White Lights podcast. Basically, championships would matter more if everyone was at the same meet.
Yep. Of course.
If everyone was at the same meet and you won, then yes. And you won year after year, then yes, it would matter more because you are consistently beating all the best guys.
Because all the best probably also mean 90% of the time. Do you know what that would probably also mean?
What?
Probably means that the winner has the all-time world record and the highest dots, because he's beating everybody in the class. Maybe the only case where that wouldn't be is if the entirety of a class year to year didn't improve, and the champion didn't best his total last year, but it was still good enough to win this year. And that is such a hyper-specific thing. If everybody's under the same roof, it matters. And let me be very clear here, neither Ron or I are saying that championships don't matter. Of course they matter. And these things do matter when there's a lower discrepancy in strength, right? If guys are 5 keys apart on total, now this kind of really does matter. It's like, whoa, if this guy just slightly underperforms, these chips, like, I know Dave was super pissed that he scratched his second and third bench because his pec was feeling weird, because if he did even just take his second bench, he probably would have only had to pull 950 or 960, which he's already done, but is certainly more than capable. I already believe he's more than capable of doing 982. If he was literally an inch further in that pull, he would have finished it. If things come over the knees for that guy, I have no idea what happens. And I think even if he was in wraps and just took the squat that he did, he would have pulled that 982. There's so many what ifs and, whatever, and that's just how sport goes. But when you're that close, championships matter a little bit more. But when it comes to all-time world records and things like that, I understand they're on different bars, which is extremely legitimate. But they have meets on Cerberus bars as well, which is something that's very interesting to me when we're touting like standards and peak stuff, that they're using bars that like nobody else uses. But Dave didn't beat his total there either. Or I guess he did beat his total, but it's in wraps, but still under dotsed him because Derek was at 246.
I also think there's something to be said as well with like shying away from competition. So I think that's definitely something that matters as well. So for example, if you have somebody like let's say you have someone who has an opportunity to go to like the American Pro or the Ghost Clash or one of these bigger meets where people are, and they decide, you know what, I prefer to just like stay in my state, do this local meet in this federation or whatever, then even though in that situation you might hit the all-time world record total, to me that puts like an asterisk by your name.
I agree.
It
A
was
slight
like,
asterisk, but an asterisk.
yeah, you know, so it's like I believe competing at big competitions is important as well once you have the opportunity to do so. But at the same time, it's like just doing those big competitions and winning, even if your numbers are below what the all-time world record might be, isn't enough. So
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I would say. And Abs is crushing it, dude. Like, I'm serious. They're coming in here and like their expansion into the States, especially. I know they're doing the Rumble next year. I just got tagged into like an expression of interest for the Rumble, like whatever. Like, we want you. They're doing the Uncle Sam thing. You Irish guys, you guys are, you know exactly. Uncle Sam.
yeah,
I will express interest in your meet because I am definitely going to be on that platform. Barring, of course, I have the opportunity to. Because it's sick and they're doing amazing things for the sport. And I want all of their meets, especially their specialty bar meets, which unfortunately they said wouldn't be on U.S. soil for a significant period of time. I want those meets to be here. That's when you're actually going to get the entirety of Untested there, and you're going to get all of this stuff. But if you just come to the U.S. on a stiff bar, you have to understand why, like, if the entirety of Untested here competes on these deadlift bars, you're going to get guys to go do it for like a novelty meet. And it's sweet. Like, that's exactly what I want to do. But if you guys come over here with, you know, specialty bars, you're going to get one of the biggest meets of the year easily, competing with any American Pro, Ghost, whatever it is. You'll get everybody to go over there. Your production value, your organization, your community, your owner, by the way, which I didn't even realize was the owner, was super sick, super cool dude. I met in the Airbnb, whatever, the day afterwards. You guys really have it going on. And you guys are going to be a massive positive, hopefully next to the massive positive that changes that PLU are bringing. Which I also forgot to say. They are not getting paid. PLU is not going to get paid for like at least the next year. So in terms of like money grab, Anna, Micah, that whole top corporate side of things aren't going to be getting paid from the federation for like a year, year and a half, which is something else to consider when it comes to money grabs. Sorry to be jumping back to PLU so much. I just remember there's so much information and I had to leave some of it out and I left a little bit more of it out than I needed to.
yeah.
But that was a lot. Okay. Abs, massively positive. Those few things were very interesting to me. Their take on open powerlifting and blah, blah, blah. But more so just interesting to me because it's different. They're like from a different country. You know, it's like, oh, wow. Okay, over there. I guess you guys unanimously agree that this is the thing. And I think that a lot of perspectives will change side to side as they become more integrated in the US circuit and things like that.
Yeah.
Brings us to point number 4, which you are definitely going to take the lead on. Nico Flores.
Yeah. So
I don't really understand it. If you could give me and everybody listening who doesn't really understand a basic overview, and the only reason we're going to really have Ron do this, Ron not only knows about it, but for those of you that don't know, Nico's been editing all of Ron's YouTube videos, which are incredible. So
yeah, for sure. And he still is gonna edit my YouTube videos. Like I don't necessarily have like a reason to
stop.
Yeah, stop, because he's been good with me and he's very timely with it. But this is what I understand of the story. And again, I haven't spoken to Nico about this directly. This is just from speaking with like different people in the community, and then also based on the songs that were dropped, the diss tracks that were dropped as well. Yeah, from Pinoy. So what I basically gathered is, and again, all this is alleged. We don't have like any like hard facts on anything. So similar to the whole,
I mean, he did straight up. One of the things I did see was he was straight up like, I did all of this. I'm sorry.
yeah,
Like at the very least, there was like a straight up admission of guilt. Maybe
yeah,
not each specific little. I have 2 pence. Maybe not like the really specific things, but he was just kind of like, yeah, I did it. All right, cool. But continue. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
yeah. So basically, the gist of it is that he was starting a company called the Garden Threads. That is his clothing brand. And he brought on Pinoy as well as another guy to be designers, because I believe they do like graphic design or something like that. and they worked with him for a few years. I think it was like a couple of years, actually, like 2 years since he started the brand. And he had promised them like a percentage split or something like that on the revenue that they got from the sales. Fast forward 2 years later, they would never paid, apparently, for any of the drops that happened, any design work that they did, anything like that. And obviously, in this time, they were kind of like talking to him about, just simply the money, like where, like where is it? And he was just very like dismissive and also like mildly disrespectful of it. I believe that there were like screenshots circulating where he was just like one of the guys, the other guy in Pinoy was talking about the fact that he needed money for rent, and Nico was like, just do DoorDash, which is crazy.
That's crazy, bro.
That
That's
is
a crazy move.
And then the thing that like I guess pushed them over the edge. I don't necessarily think this was the thing that pushed them over the edge, but one of the crazy things was that after not paying them for this long, earlier this year, Nico bought a house. So that was just kind of like a slap in the face, because it's like, we're working with you, you say you don't have the money or whatever, and then you buy a house, which is crazy.
Money, yeah.
Yeah, and then it kind of got into like I guess like just them like not necessarily slandering him, but also bringing up things that didn't really have anything to do with the actual situation. So there was like allegations of like him taking one of his clients' girlfriends, and it was just
I saw that, like a cheating thing.
Yeah, well, he didn't, it was just his client, and yeah, so it was just
Hey, that's so personal, bro. I shouldn't even, whatever. That stuff doesn't matter.
It is what it is. But yeah, so that was tough to see, just because like, especially with the whole thing that happened, right? And remember with the stuff that happened with Joe Game Day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Joe Stanek, there was like a whole thing with him as well. So I don't know what's going on in Austin.
Yeah, that gym is really a lot of but you know what's something I really didn't like about that situation?
What?
And it's something that's almost happening with this like Dan Howell situation is dude, like Weeze, right? Sean Mills, who started Worker, that is actually doing incredibly well. I missed him in what's it called? At Nats. I thought we were gonna see each other. We didn't. We were texting a little bit. But he did an event at game day right before all of this happened. And Sean started getting like heat for just being in the same room as me, be like, oh, you're bad too. And it's like, dude, what are you talking about? And now Marcellus, right, with this Dan Howell situation, which is significantly more serious. Is just getting roped in because somebody was saying that like he was talking between him and Kevin Papa, and that they were talking like knew about this the whole time, and it's just a complete fabrication. And on this side of things, it's like, hey, I don't think you guys understand. It's a lot lighter on the Nico side of things with Sean, where it's still not correct to just like, so it's what happens on social media, where if you're just in the same room as somebody and something like this happens, they just get roped in and talked about, and it's like, hey, this isn't fair. But when you're talking about something this serious, you have to understand, like, putting your name next to any sort of domestic abuse or sexual assault or anything like that, you better be so damn sure, and I mean weeks of like talking and having real evidence, that damn sure about putting somebody's name next to something like this before you just start throwing names next to these things. These aren't things that, it's like the one issue where if you're accused of it, it is not about being convicted. It is about being accused of it and the initial onset of public opinion that just destroys your name. I saw Marcellus having to do like it was like 100 stories. I didn't listen to them. Apparently in one of them, I don't even believe the phraseology of this, but somebody DM'd me, they were like, oh, why is Marcellus talking shit about you? Whatever, blah, blah, blah. I was like, dude, first of all, I don't believe Marcellus would ever actually talk like down on me at all. What he was probably referring to was that episode 1 thing where he just kept being like, people keep throwing unsubstantiated claims at me, blah, blah, blah. But to touch on it slightly, it was not very, it was directly implied by an athlete. I just wasn't up to date on it. But these things are super duper different. So I hate to see it. The only nice thing for me about this Nico situation is, well, maybe this is mean. I don't mean to be mean with it at all, but it is 100% true. I am super happy not opening Instagram to the ABCs of powerlifting and trying to capitalize on teaching people the ABCs of powerlifting to gain clout. Because I mean, oh my Lord, YouTube exists. It is said everywhere. I could not stand hearing these things reiterated every single day that I open up Instagram.
Bro, that first diss track was fire though. Like,
there was another one?
There were 3.
No.
Yeah.
Did he drop him like Kendrick? Was it that close? Was it like
he did, yeah, he did. It was like day after day. Yeah.
You know what? I'm gonna have to listen to the rest of them. That kid is great, dude. Like, I mean, some of the stuff, whatever. I'm like, all right, dude, I can't watch all this content. Like, some of this is like, I can tell you don't have an idea and you're just kind of trying to kill it, which doesn't mean it's even bad. I'm just not that kind of guy. I'm really like a training purist. I enjoy just watching people lift and stuff. But to get me out of that, like, purity, like you know, just like I just want to watch people lifting, you really got to do something. And this kid on a few occasions has like really like, I'm like, yeah, this is cool. Like, I enjoy this. This is cool.
In one of the songs, he said, feel like I'm Rondell because I'm on the hunt.
Yo, he had some bars in there too. Yeah,
he did.
Just throw that in the bio, bro, just in quotes. It's so tough. Actually, probably not. That would be super douchey of you to put in your bio. But I know exactly what you're talking about. But I guess the only things I have to say on that are that, and it's pretty unfortunate because regardless of whether I like opening up, you know, the whatever Instagram to ABCs of powerlifting or not, there were definitely a bunch of people benefiting from that content to a certain degree. So it kind of sucks to see Nico destroy himself, for lack of a better word. I don't know.
Why do you think that powerlifting is like riddled with controversy and just like drama? Like, why do things like this always come up? Because there's the whole like Russ Weeze situation that we never brought up because it just happened a while ago.
I don't even want to touch on it because I don't want, unless I have both of them on this podcast, which Russ would never, unless we grow this to 1 million subscribers and it can provide him with whatever sense of clout, because that's what he cares about. Like, never come on here. And I know that there's a lot of legal reasons that they've been apprehensive to like actually give people, you know, the full story on this stuff. But I think that it's riddled with this stuff because we are not equestrian, we're not fencing, we're not polo. We are guys that pick up barbells. It attracts a pretty interesting crowd of people. And yes, you have, you know, it's I don't know if there's a sport where there's like a broader demographic where there are guys who are like the most pure athlete guys ever. And then there are just like drug addicts that just love to take steroids and just crush it. And then there are guys who take drugs to stand at the pinnacle. Like, there's just so many, and there's anime guys and people that don't have friends that are just in it for friendship reasons. Like, and then there's just scumbags who are just like strong guys who just lift weights, and it's shady. There's not a lot of money in it. And the fact that there's not a lot of money in it leaves a lot of guys to try and create financial opportunities in it where there isn't a lot of financial opportunity, where inherently at the top of each of these opportunities that are being created, the top guy is going to really try and finesse as much as he can out of everybody beneath him. And that really just like, it's a recipe for disaster. You know what I mean? You're just going to end up having these guys that just suck. So I think that I think that's kind of it. But Nico was definitely like, whatever, somewhat of a poster boy for like USAPL or IPF, especially at a time where we've never had more new lifters coming into these federations and the sport in general. And I only don't like hearing the ABCs because I've heard them, I don't know how many times since I was 10 years old. But to a lot of these guys, it probably was their introduction to like, what's an RPE, like not overshooting, you know what I mean? Like things like that. So I think he was overall a positive on the community while he was, you know, before any of this stuff was happening with his content. I couldn't do it personally. But yeah, as soon as somebody takes steps like these and burns all these bridges and blah, 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 it's really hard to be like, I feel bad for them. You kind of just did it to yourself. This sucks, you know?
Yeah, it's crazy. And
our fifth and final current events, just to touch on very briefly here, is a new dots formula, or not new dots formula, but apparently in the works. I think it's called Z scores. I'm not 100% sure, but really interesting. After Nats, there was a meeting held where they're talking about moving away from dots, and the only thing that had to be approved at this meeting, it wasn't a full-on, you know, change of the guard from dots to these Z-score things, but by the end of the meeting, they did approve the continuation of developing this new Z-scores, and basically all it did, right, is when we had Wilkes, whether it was Wilkes 1 or Wilkes 2, Wilkes 2 just did a little bit better job than Wilkes 1 of standardizing these things and not skewing towards the ends. But both of those formulas skewed towards the ends, right? Where the middle was the most disadvantaged. If you were super light, you could get a crazy Wilkes. Like it was ridiculous. And then dots came in and started skewing towards the middle, right? Where like now technically the most advantageous classes to be in would be like that kind of 181. Really the 90 would kind of be like the peak. 90, 100, and like 110 have the opportunities to get the biggest dots, just not by as much of a discrepancy as Wilkes did towards those extremes versus the middle. So it's just the best option. Maybe the dots looked more like this and the Wilkes looked more like this. But these Z-scores on a graph looked damn near even until you got like to like 130 pounds or like 140 here. And then you got to like 308 plus over here. But it was incredibly promising. And I obviously was not at this meeting. But just looking at the graphs, I was like, wow, that could be super, super cool. And in my opinion, dots is already pretty damn fair. But you know, up until 308, honestly, I don't really ask 275 to be honest. I don't ask a 308 what their dots is. I ask them what their total is. You know, I ask a 275 what their dots is. But if we were to find a pound for pound coefficient, essentially that's what these things are. A pound for pound coefficient that was actually just like damn near even across the board. There almost is no argument for total is what matters overall anymore. It's pretty close, but this would pretty much completely eliminate it. It's like, hey, you could be 400 pounds, dude, 308, 330, and you have just as good of an opportunity. You're not stunted essentially by this new coefficient. So I thought that was like super cool. I don't know in terms of timeline when that gets implemented or if it will be implemented, but it looked cool.
Yeah. I think one of the issues people have with formulas is that like they always change and like new formulas always keep coming out. My thing with that is that like I think it makes sense that new formulas always come up. Because the thing with powerlifting is like when you compare it to other sports, the sample size that we have for this data that because basically what you're trying to do is you're trying to basically say, okay, of all humans, this formula could tell you how strong you are compared to any other human in the world on total. But the issue with it is that like previously for Wilkes, for example, right, or any other formula that came like a while back, right? The issue is that we had a lot of the genetic, like the human genetic pool that just wasn't in powerlifting. So we could not account for that. So you had guys like Ray Williams who might have just like pop out and we think, oh my God, this is the pinnacle of human existence. Then you had Jesus, you have Dan Bell, you had these guys who just come on like, it's like, I mean, Ray was cool, you know, like he's a good lifter, but there might be somebody better, you know? So, and I think that as time goes on, it makes sense to consistently implement new formulas, maybe every 5 years or something like that, as we get more people into the sport and as the data size that we get just gets bigger so that way we could actually map out what human genetic capabilities like, you know?
Agreed. If we were the NFL and had almost a perfect model for 100 years and then we're looking to change, it'd be a very different story. But we're powerlifting that is evolving at a rate that it never has before over the course of the last 5 years. And the biggest thing for me, why I think it's positive, not just like obviously getting the best coefficient that makes it fair across should all like imagine finding a coefficient that makes it perfectly even, but being like, well, we've had dots for 3 years, so let's just stick with that. Like that's stupid.
Yeah.
But I understand that it doesn't change the fact that certain people won on Wilkes and certain people won on dots, which are both imperfect to different degrees, but both imperfect metrics. I understand it doesn't change that, but you can also just as easily, once this new Z-score comes out or whatever you want to call it, go in open powerlifting, look at their total and look at their body weight and just put it in and be like, oh, okay, that's how strong I am versus this guy. Because it's not going to change their performances. It just changes the coefficient they end up with and how it changes meets. But like you can just go and check what they would be on the new coefficient, you know?
So that's literally what I tell people.
Yeah.
People don't seem to understand that any coefficient is just simply a factor of your body weight and your total. Your body weight and your total will always exist.
Yeah, would you have lifted more if you knew you were going for a Z-score, Ron? Like, no. Like, you would have lifted the exact same thing. End up
exactly. So, I don't understand how people get caught up on like formulas like that. Is like, no, we really just looking at your total and your body weight. That's all, you know.
Straight up. Like, yeah, that's it. So I think it could be very cool. I don't know how soon it's going to be implemented, but if it is implemented in a singular Fed, I hope it's implemented across all Feds. That's the only place where I kind of have a gripe with formulas, is if there isn't standardization across all of the, it's like, what are you talking about? Now we're even more, divided, whatever. You're chasing a whatever Wilks, and I'm chasing a 600 dots, and you're chasing a 50 Z score. I don't know. Maybe it's out of 1,000. Maybe it's out of 10. I have no idea. But whatever it is, I hope that if it is implemented, everybody adopts it. And then as long as everybody adopts it, and you can go back in history and go check what everybody's Z score was, then I think it would be sick and like a super duper positive.
Yeah.
But oh no, excuse me. Before we get to our top 3 sets, which I'm actually now excited for. I was not excited for, but I was like, all right, the current events are really the meat and potatoes. But now I'm kind of getting to talk about these. But before we get to that, future predictions on powerlifting overall, because this weekend, on top of just being like too big, I missed a topic. Excuse me, number 6, briefly, IPF, Subjunior, and Junior Worlds. Very quickly, Elliot Sykes, animal, right? That kid, I think it was 650 or 655. I don't know. I saw it 100 times over the past weekend.
Yeah, I think it was 655.
I think it was 655, and he's a sub junior, and that is so close to the open world record, and was much closer before Perk just went and bumped it. That kid is an absolute animal. The fact that in the IPF, we were talking about untested or guys in the USAPL taking SARMS and blah, blah, blah. And by no means am I saying Elliot Sykes takes SARMS or anything like that. That kid did not get tested after taking a total that was damn near, well, at least a squat that was damn near an open world record. And I don't know about the rest of the total. I think he pulled well and he benched well, but of course it's, it pales in comparison to Perk and Cal and Taylor. But the whole reason that the USAPL and IPF split in the first place was because of these, differences in opinions on meet frequency or on testing frequency and things like that. And they completely eliminated testing at the local level, which is insane to me. Because regardless of whether I understand in their federation, you can't take world records at, a local meet, which I guess technically you can't take a world record, but that doesn't change the fact that Derek could go walk into a local IPF meet right now or a PA meet and go put up a bigger total than will ever be touched by, a 110 or a 105 in the IPF, and won't get tested for it. It'll be an open IPF, or no, because it's PA?
It would be an open IPF.
Yeah. It would be an open IPF, but you would have to say, but this wasn't done at World, so it's not a world record. It's like, what is going on right now? But even making that horrible decision to not test at local meets, you guys aren't going to test when kids are taking world records at sub juniors and junior worlds. I don't know if Nonso was tested, but I don't see any reason why Nonso would be tested. If Elliot Sykes was, maybe I'll DM him and just get, to know. But that is absolutely insane to me that you have kids coming in doing grown men stuff at 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, and you're not going to test those kids.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think when the USAPL and the IPF had issues over testing, it was actually that the USAPL was basically testing too much.
Yeah.
So the USAPL was like they were testing more, and they were using like third party like drug testers to like save
better drug testers.
Yeah. And all the USAPL had to do to stay in the IPF was just to test less and use water.
Yep.
And they were like, nah. So
and apparently these tests that the IPF do are like incredibly easy to pass. Like it's not, they're not stringent. We're not talking about like hair samples and blood and urine and whatever. For certain guys, we absolutely are. But for the majority of these tests, they are not very stringent, and you can be taking stuff incredibly close to a meet and just drop off. Depending on the ester you're taking, whatever, just how long these things are actually in your system, and then go test and be totally fine. To not have that tested for at least I know Elliot Sykes was absolutely insane to me. But just aside from that, what did you think of Nonso's performance?
It was pretty good. I mean, I think I expected maybe like a little bit more to him. Because he was what?
On what?
Just on the total in general, because I think he totaled 938, but he was saying he was one of the total above the total world record, which is 978.5. So to be 40 keys off is, I mean, that's a lot.
On brand for the 120 IPF, right? That's what I'd call it.
Bro,
keys off from what you say you're going to do, something like that.
Bro,
how many guys, bro? How many guys? I'm not even worried about number 78. I'm here for 1,000.
Bro, that's exactly what Dev said for Big Dev said for the last meet. Which one was the rally? SPD rally. Yeah, he said that he's like, yeah, I just want 1,000. 1,000's on the table.
Tony said the same thing. Bob said the same thing. Granted, Bob's a 105. I don't care what anybody says, right? But like,
yeah, it's just crazy to me that like everybody wants 1,000 and nobody's past 978.5.
Yeah, it's like if I was Dennis Cornelius, I'd be like, dude, what am I? Like chopped liver? Like this has stood for this long. Like the only guy that has any business treating that record as nonchalantly as they are is you, because you genuinely just blew past. It's like nothing. But these guys are, whatever, significantly off from this record and just being like, oh, it's nothing. My only thing with Nonso's he lifts to an incredible standard. I honestly love his lifts. The 9/11 call was absurd to me. I was like, what are you doing? I mean, I guess I don't blame him. He's young. And I guess his progression has been relatively rapid. And I've been at fault as well, where when I went from 562 to 806 in a year or a little over a year. And then the next meet at the pro was like, I'm going 848. I just had no business loading. I didn't know what that was, but I was like, I've been progressing. I'll just tack on another 30 pounds. But you get to the point, bro, where like 400 keys and 900 pounds alone are not the same thing. Ron can tell you. Ron spent, you pulled 400 keys in corrupted. And then how long was it before you pulled 9? After like 5 attempts or whatever it was.
Year and a half, yeah.
A year and a half, and with 5 attempts in between. I'm not saying Nonso is going to take that long to do it, whether he takes longer or shorter. It is a wild thing to do, to just hop up and be like, oh, I got 9/11. I got the heaviest thing, ever. Especially when you're just trying to secure like a fat total. Maybe with the fact that he already won, the meet, he was just kind of taking a shot in the dark, like cool. But going 848 to 9/11 with a best training pull of 400 keys, when the 400 key deadlift not being after a massive, it wasn't taking an SBD day, was it? No, exactly. Done solo on a deadlift day. You really got to think about these factors, especially with travel to multi and all these things. It was just kind of a crazy move to me. And then the really craziest thing was his caption on the post, where I was like, that might be the first thing Nonso's ever said, because I love that kid. He's awesome. And he said he's whatever, followed me, followed you, looked up to us forever. Like he's like a really cool, one of the few kids that's coming up that like actually seems to have followed this over the past, at least since COVID, like 5 years or so. But his caption on like the 9/11 miss was like, damn, like I thought, or my powerlifting progression is less linear than I thought it was going to be. It's like, how? You've had the most linear progression I've ever seen in you just missed a singular lift. And it was the all-time world record deadlift, not on a stiffy. Dave owns that. But in the IPF, like, you cannot be disappointed, dude. Pick your chin up and go load 904 at the next one, or go legitimize 400 keys. You pulled it once, you know what I mean? Go do it. And what would that have done for his total? That would have added 15 keys. It would have been from 948 or 938. He would have been at like what?
963.
Bro, like, you know what I mean? Or whatever. High 950s, low 960s. Like, that's much easier to understand. Okay, he was trying to break the world record and he's young and he's coming up. He thought he had this and, he ended up 10, 15 keys short. But falling like 50 keys short is like, ooh, you kind of had no business saying that, when strength-wise, I think he might have had slight business saying I'm going to near it or come relatively close, or at least do something exciting enough to get people excited about him entering Open. But yeah,
I think people are still excited though, because
of course I'm excited. You're excited.
Yeah.
You overplayed it. I told you not to overplay it.
I'm no longer excited.
Bro, rising lifters, this is nothing to say on Nonso at all. But when Nonso started kind of building and coming up, me and Ron were like, dude, this kid's awesome. We really wanted to support him, like we still do. But Ron went overboard when I forgot what you said. It was some story. You were like, what'd you say?
I forgot. I need to pull it up. Go ahead though.
It was something along the lines of like, this kid's a serious competitor. Like this kid, I can't wait. I can't wait to bang
Oh,
heads.
no. I said the battle may be sooner than expected.
Yes, the battle may be sooner than expected. And I think what Rondell meant was like sooner in like 5 years or so, something like that. And Rising Lifters took it. Rising Lifters, you horrible people. I just want to throw that in. Rising Lifters takes a screenshot of it, like takes a screenshot of Nonso, takes a screenshot of Ron, and is like, Rondell is saying that Nonso is poised to go head to head with him soon. Like this is going to be a battle forever. Like, bro, look at swipe. What does it say?
The battle may be sooner than expected.
Swipe.
It was his.
Oh, it was a great poll. 848, I think. Is that comps on there or no?
This is 848.
Yeah, he has comps on there. So 848. Him pulling his first 848. Not to mention, Ron squats 848. Ron benches damn near 600 pounds. Right? Like there's no. It's not even close when we're talking about the conversation on total. But Ron was just trying to be like, whatever, like a cool, strong, older dude being like, yo, this kid is legit and he is coming up and he will end up doing things that battle with me. But I thought that was hilarious that like immediately after that, I told you the second you said it, I was like, don't say that, bro. People are going to take this and run. And they started running. They loved it. But whatever, maybe you gave Nonso a little boost of confidence in training that has propelled him, toward, not to take any credit away from him. He is the one lifting. He's the one making all this progress. It's sick. But I know, at least for me at my age, when any of the deadlifters I looked up to were like, hey, dude, this kid's legit, it made me feel like I was legit. And I trained with a different level of reckless abandon and confidence. And it was awesome. So that is our last current events section. Future predictions for powerlifting. I feel like really the only way to do this is briefly touch on kind of each federation, like future of IPF. What do you think?
I think that the IPF is gonna continue to like
prosper.
Yeah, prosper. Just because over the last year they already got the best athletes on the tested side, and I think they kind of like basically suck the USAPL dry. And even if they haven't, at the position that they are now, they just slowly just like everyone is just becoming more and more attracted to them.
Everybody's slowly circling and is going to end up there. And I agree. I wish, like we talked about in episode 2, more people were willing to stand up against what would bar me, or in my opinion, any man of integrity from competing in that federation, but they're not. Clearly it's like getting cheated on by a girl and going back. Like they show you cross, they cross this line and you guys are still there. They're going to treat you like a piece of garbage for the rest of eternity because you're showing them they can do it. And as long as you keep doing that, you're just going to garner more talent. And I fully assume in the next year or two, I mean, I don't know what kind of reserves the USAPL have, but within at least the next, let's call it 2 to 5 years, the USAPL won't be a thing. And the tested side of powerlifting will be an incredibly streamlined, well-oiled machine under the banner of IPF and PA, or PA on the America side of things, obviously every other federation there. And that kind of takes care actually of the entirety of tested powerlifting, because if we talk about what we're it's going to die. I think it's going to die. It's going to be sad, but I think that just is what it is. Hopefully Frank doesn't, sorry. What's it called? Hopefully Frank doesn't want to compete anymore. I told Frank, I mean, I know he's going to do a few more powerlifting meets, but I was like, dude, when you see that guy in person, he's 400 pounds, he's 6'6" or 6'7", whatever he is, he's massive. And his hands are way too big. The only thing that stops him on deads, I told him to go to strongman, and he's like, yeah, that's probably where I'm going to end up. I was like, dude, yeah, I don't know what he could yoke. He runs backwards at 100 miles an hour with 1,000 pounds on his back. He's going to be insane if he does go do that. But literally outside of Frank on the USAPL side of things, there isn't an athlete that I would like hope would stick to, you know what I mean? Everybody should move over because it's where it is. And everybody should also stand up at the same time against this Article 14 ridiculousness.
That is basically two opposite things that...
No, if everybody moved over and then says, we're not going to compete though, you guys have to, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know what to, it has to go away. But what's it called? For untested abs, what do you think?
I think the leadership there is really enthusiastic about powerlifting itself, and I feel as if they are the type that will listen to the athletes. So I could see them. I don't know if I don't know about them becoming like the premier untested federation, but I could see them becoming definitely like a big player worldwide, because even when they were just in Ireland, I feel like if they were still making a lot of waves, especially with the quality of stuff that they were putting out and just the promotion and stuff like that. So to come across to the States now, again, if they implement the meets in the right type of format, as we were saying, I don't see why they can't be, right there with well, I was gonna say WRPF, but
PLU, yeah. So
PLU.
I was gonna say predictions on the WRPF future, but I don't think that exists anymore, to be honest, when it comes to the US. But my predictions for abs in the future is they are about to become a massive key player. And I really hope that they change their mind about the whole specialty bar thing on US soil in terms of it coming soon, because I just know that the majority of the sport over here certainly cares about records and cares about open powerlifting. It's the only reason I compete. I know it's the reason why a lot of these other top guys compete as well. And outside of getting guys to be like, hey, I want to step on an ab stage like I do, abs platform, in sort of a novelty meet kind of way, and just like, hey, let's do a stiff bar meet. This would be fun. Outside of that, you're not going to really get the top guys to consistently compete there and take pounds off their total for some arbitrary sense of purity that isn't a higher standard. It's just done on a different bar than the entirety of the history of the sport has been on. But
Yeah,
they are certainly crushing it on the organizational side of things, on the promotional side of things, on more than anything. They are making guys feel like athletes and cared for and listened to. I saw interviews. They picked them up from the airport. There was a legitimate press conference that in the contract for the meet, if you signed up for the meet, you were contractually obligated to go to this press conference. And that was sweet to see. Guys really cared. And it's something that's definitely missing here at the moment. Whether PLU is going to bring it or not, I see abs very much so if they come in under the right format. And come in and bring more than just one meet a year in terms of like the Rumble, becoming neck and neck players when it comes to WRPF and PLU, because they're incredible. And those are some cool dudes. Did I even tell you I was with Gercules? I didn't know it was with Gercules.
No, you didn't say.
Dude, I was with, I didn't even realize I was with him. I guess he's a strongman, which I didn't know. And he, won second strongest natty like strongman show in Ireland, like Ireland's strongest man, second place, but in a natural show. Super, all these Irish dudes, dude, I'm telling you, they're dudes that I just want to like chill. I was super out of it when I was talking with him, but I did not realize he was Gercules. Super cool guy in person, super not a fan of some of the things he does online. Went way too far with the Hunter situation, went way too far. The Shane thing for me is why I didn't, but I didn't even put the two together. I didn't realize he was Gercules, and that dude was like super cool. So I don't know. Their whole thing over there is awesome. Now, future of PLU, what do you think? Difficult.
I want to be optimistic.
Me too.
And not even being optimistic, I think they will. I think they will like continue to thrive, and they will become the premier federation on the untested side. The reason why I say that is just because at the end of the day, federations are really just there to like facilitate meets and facilitate the athletes competing. So it's like, if the best meet directors have moved across there, then I don't see why it wouldn't be basically the same thing, you know?
It is the same thing. Last suggestion for PLU before I touch on the future of them. I keep forgetting. I'm sprinkling all of these like PLU recommendations in throughout the entire podcast because I'm a sped and I wasn't able to collect my thoughts at the same time. But eliminate the kabuki completely. If you want to talk about any like specialty bar, any switch from bar to bar kind of messing up, right? Like a stiff bar, you were mentioning earlier that the switch from Texas to kabuki was already major for a Fed in terms of inflating certain records and, doing this and helping certain people and hurting other people. It personally hurt me significantly until about a year and a half after it was introduced. Really hurt Jamal for like a year and a half. We were DMing for literally the better part of a year being like, I don't understand this thing, dude. Like, how are we supposed to, I don't get it. But then immediately helping somebody like Danny and immediately helping somebody like Nabil. It's just too different. And nobody really had a ton of complaints when it was on a Texas. So I think going back to a Texas would be awesome, at least in due time. I understand you guys have the bars on hand and, whatever, maybe finish out the year on a kabuki or finish out the next year and a half on a kabuki. But once, things really die down and things are really there in legitimate infrastructure, that bar should go. It's horrible. But in terms of my predictions on the future for them, I'm incredibly optimistic, just because I am, whatever, I happen to be good friends with a lot of the corporate side of things and, like the head, the leadership. And again, it's nothing that when we're talking, semi-professionally on a podcast, I don't want to just be talking from a place of like my heart and like I'm friends and I know these guys and I know where their hearts are and I know that they're, at the end of the day, purity and pure looking for the betterment of powerlifting. But in my opinion, and really knowing the intricacies of these relationships, they have been held down by leadership for quite a bit of time. It's why Garrett left, which I'm really hoping he comes back now, because his whole thing was like, I'm not getting paid enough and I'm not, whatever. It's a hostile work environment. I can't do all of this. I can't put in this much effort for this little gain. But now it is his opportunity and their opportunity to have the reins and really create the federation that we've been looking for and that they've been looking to provide for us for a long time. So obviously barring the reality of this not being a thing, like them, just kind of the same thing happening and that sucks. I think it's going to rise further than the WRPF did. And I hope that them and ABS can really bring a really cool dynamic to the untested side, period.
For sure.
All right, now to this is the main topic, and it's going to go significantly faster. When we were talking about top 10 performances, there's significantly more to talk about surrounding those performances because it's a whole meet. And you talk about competitors and preps and blah, blah, blah. These are sets. And before we get to these, we want to say no singles. We have eliminated singles. No 500 kilo from Jamal. No huge squat here from, whatever, anybody. No big bench single. These are sets and reps. And, we talk about standard all the time and things like that. And of course, the standards factor in here, but they don't factor in half as much as they do when we're talking about platform lift, right? These are dogs, just really crushing it. So I guess we'll start with squat and our honorable mentions on squat, where we're going to go with Emerson Noble, who, for those who don't know, Tom Platz's squat world record, which was done on, like boom plates and, whatever, but he did, I think it was 505 for 23, something like that, 515 for 23. Yeah. Emerson did 505, I believe, maybe 515 for 19 or 20, high bar, beltless, and sleeveless, which is one of the purest things I've ever heard in my entire life. It's one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. And it was on a whim. He didn't train for it or anything like that. It was wild. So we have Emerson Noble. We have Colton, who I am sorry, Colton, if you were listening to this, I DM'd you asking for a video, and it was going to be in my third spot, but I found a couple sets that I couldn't do. And I think once you maybe listen, you'll probably be able to tell why I just could not throw, whatever, his 355-ish, I think was whatever, 782 for 5 at 242, which was insane, but I can't throw that above these squats. We have Colton, we have Ray Williams for obvious reasons. We have Jamar Royster's 821, I think. Yeah. Jamar Royster's 821, which was a single, which honestly shouldn't even be in this honorable mention list, but whatever, we threw it in there. Captain Kirk's 1,000-pound double, probably one of the coolest videos I've ever seen in my life. Don't know if I've watched a video more in my life. And then Ed Cohn. But to our number 3 spot, we have Andrei Milanichev's 440, 970 for 3, way back in these sick Russian training halls. We're going to throw all the videos here or here. I don't know which side of the screen I'm going to be on. But this was back when, like, whatever, approaching 1,000 pounds raw was wraps. Like, this was coming out of equip. There was no like real legit raw lifting on the untested side. Everybody was in wraps. The competitive guys were in wraps. If there was a good guy in sleeves, it was like he was stealing a competitor away from the wraps, where nowadays it's like you see somebody like Colton, right, in wraps, and you're like, dude, just get in sleeves. You're stealing a competitor from the real competition pool, which I know he's going to go sleeves. But when this was done, the ease it was done to, the fact that the wraps weren't crazy tight, and really just the depth that this was done to. It's such a ridiculously raw squat that, like, I don't even know what to say about it. It's sick. I'm going to send you a picture, Ron, of our list so that we can announce them together. and I'm going to do it right now because I realize I'm going to be the one talking the entire time if you do not have our list. All right.
All right, so number 2 on the all-time best squat list is Jesus's 925 for 4. And I mean, there's so many like different Jesus sets that we could have picked from, just because like
Hey, that
Jesus.
though, for sure. That only one guy, like there's no repeat. Jesus would probably have all 3 sets, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
On squat. So, but only one guy per list, if that makes sense.
Yeah, because I believe he had like I think it was 830 for 7, or
815 for 8. I know, like they're insane, dude.
no, because I remember specifically we were saying, bro, Colton is almost like as good as Jesus when it comes to squat volume, and the next day,
Yeah, I remember. Actually, you're right. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
So
all right.
yeah, Jesus 925 for 4. I don't think much else needs to be said about it. Yeah, considering the fact that he doesn't have like, yeah, he doesn't have as big a squat as like Ray, for example. Somebody like volume work that he does is like absolutely ridiculous. So.
Yeah, but also in my opinion, the standard it's done to is significantly better. I love Ray, but Ray squats high. I don't care what anybody says; it's super objective.
Yeah.
But Jesus is burying this stuff. It's on keys. It's on a power. It would be more impressive if it was on pounds, to be honest, which he has also done. Squatted 9+ for like a K on pounds. It's insane. But he is donking these squats. And it's just incredible to see. I don't see a lot of guys that big move that efficiently in a cool manner. Which brings us to our number 1 squat set of all time with Jeza Uwepa. I think that's how you pronounce it. I have no idea. Jeza Uwepa at 992 for 2. And this usurped Ray's 1,003 for 2 for me, just because of the standard it was done to. It's significantly better depth, and it's easy. And I feel like Jeza does not get talked about enough at all, relative to like Ray or some of these other big squatters. But that man is an absolute animal. And granted, I scoured the internet, for a bit, and have a lot of these, sets in my head. But we may be missing, 1 or 2, kind of across the board. But regardless, that set is arguably the most impressive squat set ever done beyond a single.
For sure. So yeah, on to bench. You want to do the honorable mentions?
Yes. So honorable mentions. We have Kirill. Obviously, Sarshev, for those of you that don't know, he's actually who owns the WRPF. He's crazy, dude. Now he runs Power Slap, and he held the all-time bench world record at 738 for quite a bit of time before Julius came in. I think Julius is the one that beat it by initially. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on that. Somebody else might have come in and then Julius did it, but I'm pretty sure Julius beat it and then blew right past it to the 782 that he ended up with, and just falling short of 8 on many occasions. But Kirill, absolute animal, gets paid by the Russian government, runs Power Slap, crushes all-time world records. He's a freak. I wish he didn't retire as early as he did. Johnny Harris, out of DMV Iron, absolute freak. Joseph Tombarello, the commercial gym warrior. I wish I could put him on this list because, to be honest with you, when it comes to benching big weights in a commercial gym is probably more impressive to me than benching absolutely anywhere, as long as things are paused and done correctly. He is benching on essentially a foam roller. Like, those benches are bowed and slippery and gross. They're horrible. So Joseph Tombarello, Daniel Rajov, he did like 225 for 100 something. It was like the weirdest. I was like, what is going on? But he had the wraps on, so I don't care. Jeremy Hornstra, for obvious reasons, and then Larry, because Larry belongs, if we're talking gym lifts, Larry belongs in damn near every honorable mention, maybe outside of squat because of like depth, and stuff like that. But I have no problem calling Larry Wheels probably the king of the gym. Not the platform, but the gym. That dude was doing things I don't even know what to say about. But you could start with our third spot, yeah?
Yeah, so third spot, I mean, all these guys are like legends when it comes to bench. Looking at the list here, I wish we had found like a super light guy doing like.
Me too. I thought about John, and I thought about certain guys that just like, but it's hard because at the end of the day, bench is the lift where it's like, this is about being big, heavy, and jacked. Like, if I were to put somebody that's super light in there doing something relatively impressive, I would get a lot of people, bench purists being like, how dare you put that above, these are massive benchers and people that are really repping what were formerly all-time world records that were held for a significant period of time. But I share your sentiment.
Yeah, for sure. So number 3, we have Eric Spoto with 675 for 3. Eric Spoto, obviously, I believe most people would know who this is just because he has an exercise. What?
I said I hope so.
Yeah, because he has an exercise named after him that I feel like a decent amount of powerlifters do today. I haven't seen the set. I've seen the second and first sets, but
Not even real.
Was it just that easy?
No, it literally doesn't look real. Like, I don't know. That's the one thing when you're talking about these sets, honestly, across the board, is the majority of these sets aren't all out sets. Like, some of these are PRs for these guys, but a lot of these sets are just like working sets left with 1 or 2 in the tank. It looked like he probably had 3 to 4 more reps. Like, it was one of the most ridiculous displays of strength I've ever seen in my entire life. And it wasn't done. His chest touched, obviously, Eric Spoto. His variation is just finishing, like about an inch above the chest, like, right here and coming back up. And it teaches you great tightness and saves your shoulders for a lot of guys, whatever it is. But this was touched, and he probably could have done it for 6 or 7. It was one of the most egregious displays of upper body strength I've ever seen in my entire life. So Spoto, an absolute animal, which brings us to our next animal in TD Smash. The first man to bench 700 in a full power meet, absolute tank with 702 for 2, which, and Spoto, by the way, I was debating between going 675 for 3 or 635 for a 3x3 and that final set. Like, think about that. Like a 3x3, it's like kind of what Colton does where he's like, crazy set. 4x5. It's like, what? 5 times, like, 4 times. What are we even talking about? But TD here with 702 for 2, absolute animal. I mean, we're talking about the kings of bench in these top 2. And honestly, kind of speaks for time. I mean, it's TD. He's retired now. He's focusing on whatever family and health stuff and whatever. But by no means does this belong anywhere on this list aside from number 2. 700 was the craziest barrier to cross ever, and he's repping it.
Yeah. And then number 1 is, if you guys can't guess who number 1 is after we said TD and Spoto.
If we didn't say TD and Spoto and you can't guess who number 1 is, you have a problem.
Yeah. So it's Julius Maddox. Wait, wasn't there this guy who there was like the allegation?
No, Daniel Almaty does not. That guy goes nowhere near this stuff. No, absolutely not. That does not count. I have no idea. Those plates might be fake. That bench is significantly high. That pad is significantly fat. None of those plates are weighed. You can't buy them anywhere. There is so much controversy surrounding that. I completely eliminated him from this list.
Okay. So number 1 is the only thing more impressive than 700 for 2, and that's 700 for 3, Julius Maddox. Yeah, I don't even know what to say about this set. It was pretty crazy. What was his best bench ever? It was 793.
It was 790. It was 782 in comp. Very sad. The one day that I really thought he had 800 was one of the worst misloads that's ever happened in powerlifting, where they misloaded him by a red on an 800-pound bench attempt. And it was the saddest thing ever. He took it out, fully came over, but it was by far the most promising second he's ever had in his life. I think the other day he could have taken it would have been at Hybrid 2021, where I wish it wasn't like an ego thing. It seems like an ego thing. I'm not friends with Julius. We've never talked or anything like that. But where he was like, no, if I'm going to bench 8, it's going to be at like my thing, which is why he had an event at Wrigley Field where they came in Chicago Barbell Compound, took a combo from there, took the plates from there and everything and brought it out there. He wanted it to be like this whole spectacle for himself. But the 2 times where I really think he did have 8 and we didn't really get to have a fair attempt at it was a Hybrid 2021 where he just didn't load it, and then that massive misload at his own event, which sucked. But needless to say, Julius is we're talking king of bench, like different level of king of a lift, where nobody's close, to be honest. So I don't know. This Smaev guy, I'm very excited to see if he actually does anything like legit. Have you seen the Smaev guy?
No, I haven't.
He's this random 24-year-old out in like Russia, I think, and he's a calisthenics athlete. He's like 400 pounds damn near, like 25-inch arms. Guy did 30 pull-ups with 100 keys below him. Does like human flags benched, I think 300 keys. He has elbow wraps on, but like 300 keys for like 7 or 8. Like, dude, I'm gonna send you some videos. You're gonna be like, what is going on? He like broad jumped 10 plus feet at like 350. Guy is insanely athletic. But hopefully if he hops in and like legitimizes something, I can actually look at him like a serious athlete instead of just like some crazy monster freak out in Russia. That caps off bench. Now, at least my personal favorite. That we will start with honorable mentions here. Colton, for sure, that 905 for 6 he just did. We honestly could go with a few of his sets, but that 905 for 6 was egregious. That was insane. We have, you wanted to throw Ron in here, 859 for 3, conventional, stiffy, under, we put it on there. Under horrible conditions. I actually still can't believe he did that. I can't believe either of us did that day, to be honest.
Yeah, sure.
Then we have Shane Hunt with 881 for 6, done in corrupted at an extremely like in my opinion, we are waiting for the best Shane Hunt, and it's not even close. He's been capable of 8+ mid 5s and a K on a Kabuki or a Texas or whatever you want to call it for quite some time. And there's been a lot of like personal stuff and interfamily stuff and injuries and things like that have prevented him from doing it. But after we had him, we had so much fun. We're hanging at my house after the Rumble, and I think he has a great mindset moving into like this next. He's coming down, going to do like a legit 12 to 16 weeks of volume on the Kabuki again, and then hop into a meet prep, and hopefully he'll execute the total that has been waiting for him for the better part of 2 or 3 years at this point. So Shane, Christoph, Wazurbic, I don't know how many sets we could pick for him. But specifically, I'd like to pick the strapless set that he did literally last week. We could probably go back 6-7 years and find something that, belongs close to this list, but he did just do 433.5 for 2 hook. And his whole thing is always being this strapped guy. And that is the world record that I'm currently trying to beat. And he just pulled it for 2 sub-maximally in the gym, super chill without straps. So we'll pick that. And then we have Bolton and we have Yuri. And those are our honorable mentions.
Wait, now, did we not throw in Bob?
So there's this set, right? First of all, SBD Saturday Bob belongs on it's like there's like 1, 2, 3, and then there's like S tier. And that is SBD Saturday Bob, where I don't know what he's capable of on his SBD Saturdays, but it's probably more than Jesus is capable of. I don't know what's up with that guy in that gym, but he's a completely different animal. And there was one day where he posted this set and his caption was like, made a tweak, like whatever it was. That's all it was. It was like, made a little tweak. This man starts ripping 793 off the ground. Like I've never seen any stiff bar pull move faster in my entire, like it was it was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my entire
I wouldn't even describe it as crazy. I would describe it as scary. Like that was,
it looked like fake. Like it was
that was the day when like I began to question like is Bob going to like put like embarrass me? Like is he gonna embarrass
me too? We were like, I remember commenting, I was like, what's that tweak, bro? Like, yo, like what are you talking about? And then sadly, he is incredibly strong, but I have not seen that level of strength replicated from him or honestly anybody. It was just the weirdest, like, what? I wish he was competing on that day. Or at least I was there to see it. But yes, we, not as a joke, but like kind of as like a running joke between me and Ron, we refer to that set all the time. We are throwing that in our honorable mentions because it is our honorable mentions. Take it off with, or number 3 is Sir Dave.
Yep.
8-1 for 5.
Dave is low-key the guy that like I look up to when it comes to conventional pulls. Like clearly I'm not as strong as him, but I like want to like try to like keep pace with him. Like I want to like progress on the level that he's like progressing, because like his conventional is very enjoyable to watch, and like the aggression that he pulls with is Yeah, it's nice.
First of all, meeting him over this last weekend was one of the coolest. I felt like such an ass. I came up to him so hot after that third pull that he happened to miss. It's like his first miss, and I don't know how long. He said a couple years or so, maybe even 3 years. But I came up so excited to be like, dude, you can match in sleeves. Like, look, like how low your degree of knee flexion is in wraps. You don't even use them outside of the bunching in the back. You know, like you can damn near match your best squat. And you know, and he was just kind of down overall, but still cool and super excited to meet and hang and stuff. But this, he's semi like a muse of mine when it comes to deadlifting, and I did not realize, because obviously his clips on Instagram are edited. You know how Blake spends like an ungodly amount of time down at the bar?
Yeah.
I'll throw Blake in there, honorable mentions. Sorry, when it comes to gym lifts at his body weights, that's some of the craziest stuff ever as well. But Dave spends an incredible amount of time standing over that bar in an elongated hamstring position before he throws those knees in and actually goes. He just cuts it to where it looks like, you know, on Instagram, he just kind of throws it in. But he was over that bar for like, I don't know, 10 to 15, maybe 15 to 20 seconds before actually going and initiating the pull, which is very interesting. He must be extremely comfortable. Well, clearly he's extremely comfortable. He also does the same thing on squat. But 881 for 5, mixed grip, stiffy, conventional. That is has to be one of the most raw sets ever. We're talking about the most conventional 400 keys has ever been pulled for, period, in a strongman setting. When we're talking about guys hundreds of, well, not hundreds, but whatever, 100, 150 pounds heavier than him, with suits, with a strap, with all of this stuff, 400 keys has only been pulled conventional for 6 reps. He's pulling it. He is pulling it for 5 in as raw of a form as you possibly can. So I don't know, that it certainly belongs on this list. We have Dave at number 3.
For sure. Number 2 is Dan Grigsby. That is 964.
Yep.
964 for 2. I feel like Dan is capable of so much more in terms of like rep work. I feel like he should be number 1 when you guys hear what the number 1 is. But this was on hook grip, right?
Yeah. No, this was hook grip.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So 964 for 2, and it was incredibly comfortable. I think I had seen the weeks leading up to this as well, because this is when he was posting a little bit more consistently. Yeah. And I thought he would end off with like 1,000, but I feel like he's just very conservative in his training.
He is when it comes to doubles. He only pushes. Dan is like the most through and through legit powerlifting. It matters on the platform. It doesn't matter anywhere else guy around. So of course, when we're eliminating singles here, right? Danny didn't take our top spot, but when it comes to the number 1 deadlifter of all time, it has to be Danny. It's not negotiable. We're in an objective sport. It's just how it goes. Pull 1075. I mean, needless to say, he's a great friend of mine. But this 964 for 2 was definitely like the cleanest and hook, right? The majority of his volume is done with straps, and it is usually higher volume stuff. It's not a single, but this was hook. It was done incredibly clean, and I don't know, he could have done it for 5 or 6 or however many he wanted to. He's an absolute animal. I don't even know what to say. Which brings us to number 1, to our other boy, Jamal.
Jamal 1,003.
Dude,
and did he attempt 4 here? He attempted 4.
Oh, yeah.
Do
you remember the time frame this happened?
No.
Okay, I was gonna say, because I have to go back and find it because I got to throw it up on the screen or whatever. But was this when he was gonna go for 500? Is this when he called us for the 500 kilo?
The same day that he missed?
No, like wasn't this the set that he did, and then he called us and was like, "I want to go for 500 kilo for 2 next week."
Possibly, yeah.
I think it was. He was just on a ridiculous roll at this. Yeah. Is the only thing that I'm trying to say here. Or like literally, he was ripping this 1,000 pounds off the ground so easily. And the 1,000-pound barrier is something. Yes, he pulled it, you know, a long time ago when it comes to straps and to being at this standard, but it was still for a single. And it's obviously something that until Danny and Jamal bumped heads at the showdown, which was the first time it was like loaded with, you know, a legitimate degree of credibility, where it was like, whoa, these guys could do it. Was a barrier that just hadn't been crossed. I mean, you have Benny, but like whatever, a ton of controversy surrounding that to a certain degree. But it was just a mythical number. and then Danny passed it with 1,025, and then Jabal passed it, and then Danny went 1,074, but which slightly, in my opinion, desensitizes people to just how incredible a 1,000-pound deadlift is. There's still only 2 guys that have done it. And the only 2 guys, I mean, Colton is nearing it, and Shane at peak potential can, and I believe Derek will progress to it, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. But to rep 1,000 pounds for volume, something that was essentially like unimaginable to a powerlifting standard just 3 or 4 years ago, and where you're struggling with that and turn it into a sub-maximal, is egregious. So that certainly tops our list when it comes to the deadlift.
For sure. Well,
I
yeah,
guess that's it. Yeah.
I think so.
Sheesh, my back hurts. This chair's horrible. I gotta.
Bro, this episode was a lot longer than I anticipated.
Was it? What time is it?
It is 5:30 your time.
Oh my God, bro! I have to timestamp this. All right. Well, this was No BS Powerlifting, episode 3. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and sorry for the delay last week. We had a lot going on, but we're planning to get an episode out every Friday.
And also, Rise and Lifters is garbage. You guys should not follow them.
They're horrible. Goodbye.